I remember the first time that I ever played backyard tackle football. I was 11 years old. I had just moved to a new neighborhood, and some of the kids in the area had invited me to come out and play. And I was the smallest kid on the field that day, and I was a little nervous, but I was actually really excited to just be there. I also remember the first time I got hit. I mean, really hit. The kind of hit where you're not sure you'll ever catch your breath again. The biggest kid in the neighborhood lined up on defense across from me, and I was playing quarterback. When I saw him, and looking back, I feel like he must have been 7 feet tall and 300 pounds, but I'm sure that wasn't the case. But I remember looking at him and saying to myself, he doesn't look like he's going to honor the 5 Mississippi rule. And sure enough, he didn't. As soon as I hiked the ball, he came barreling through the line. He hit me as hard as he possibly could. I remember getting up and just being ticked about it. I was so mad. And I looked at him and I said, dude, why would you hit me that hard? Like, why did you do that? And he looked at me and said, I knew if you could take that hit and keep playing, that you deserve to be out here. Now, looking back 25 years later, I realized he wasn't trying to be malicious. He wasn't trying to hurt me. He just wanted to see if I could take the hits and keep on playing. That day, we ended up winning the game, and I earned the respect of the biggest 12-year-old in the neighborhood. For many of you, life has been a lot like my experience. You've been kicked, you've been beaten down, you've had the air knocked out of you, and right now you may even be saying to yourself, is it all worth it? One of the things I love about football is how the game can change from the first half to the second half. On January 3rd, 1993, the Buffalo Bills were hosting the Houston Oilers. A few minutes into the third quarter, the Bills were losing by 32 points. And at that moment, all hope seemed lost. No team had ever come back from such a deficit, and some fans had already begun to leave the stadium. It seems like we are always faced with these crossroads moments where the path towards a victorious life just seems impossible. Maybe you've made too many mistakes, or maybe the people that should be closest to you in your life have now started to abandon you. Well, I've got a word for you. The second half is coming. If you know football, you know that the Buffalo Bills came back in the second half and ended up winning in overtime by 3 points. It was a lesson for future teams that you don't define the game by how good or how bad you did in the first half. You define the game by how you finish it. I think about Jesus' second half experience. His first half was filled with all sorts of amazing and incredible things, the miracles, the signs and wonders. But ultimately, he entered the locker room at halftime, beaten up, rejected, and crucified. If anybody had the right to quit in the middle of the game, it was Jesus. But he knew something that the Apostle Paul would later echo. In Romans 8:18, it says that these present sufferings are not worth comparing to the future hope that will be revealed to us. You see, Jesus knew what his second half would look like. He rose from the grave, and he's alive today, interceding for us. Hebrews 7:25 says that he is able once and forever to save those who come to God through him. What we often forget about the Buffalo Bills' second half comeback is that they didn't do it with their starting quarterback. They did it with the backup. And that made their comeback all the more improbable, yet all the more incredible. You see, it doesn't matter if you've got it all together or if you feel like that you're leading the perfect life. It doesn't matter who you are or what the score is at halftime right now. It's time that you begin to step into the things that God has planned for you. Your second half is going to be greater than your first half, and God is going to be able to walk you towards victory in a way that you never thought possible. It doesn't matter what your mistakes were. It doesn't matter what the times that you slipped up. All you have to know is that you can make a comeback, and now is the time to start. Right now you are getting ready for the second half of this game, but I want to urge you to get ready for the second half of your life. if you've never made a commitment to Jesus, I want to encourage you to say this prayer with me right now. Dear Jesus, I know I've made mistakes. I know I've sinned. I want to ask you to forgive me. I want to make you the Lord of my life. I believe you are the Son of God and that you died and rose again. Please come into my life. Amen. If you just prayed that prayer with all sincerity, God is lining you up for your second half comeback. We want to encourage you to connect with your host of your Super Bowl party. They're going to have some materials to put in your hands, and we would love to invite you out to the greatest church I know, Victory Worship Center, next Sunday. We would love to get the chance to meet you and help you become everything that God has called you to be. We hope to see you there next Sunday. Now enjoy the second half of the game.